today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and founder and CEO to Guide with HR. So I have Mickie Kennedy here today, and I'm super excited to be talking about some lesson learns, always a fun topic of mine, as well as some PR information from the expert. So Mickie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, so my name is Mickie Kennedy. I run and am the founder of eReleases. I started it about 26 years ago, and basically I help entrepreneurs, small businesses, startups get access to the media utilizing a newswire, PR newswire in this case. And in the US, it's largely a duopoly with Business Wire and PR Newswire. And you definitely want to make sure you reach one of them. There's no need to reach both. But it started me working for a startup 27 years ago and being handed a Rolodex of fax numbers and saying, here, write press releases, figure that out, and fax it to these guys. And so I did that. And at first, I did it very poorly. But looking at what journalists were writing, I realized that what I was sending them was just a lot of data tables, and we were publishing numbers. So I felt like that's what they want. And instead, I realized that journalists like to write in a story arc, and it's hard to have a story arc with numbers. So I started looking behind some of the numbers and finding, where there are anomalies or strange little, growth patterns, and talking about those. I got really good at it. The first one I did was I had sent out fax with data tables for the Caribbean countries, and the traffic predominantly to and from the United States was the big lead with it, and nothing happened. And then I looked, and there was one country, I forgot what it is, that was way more traffic than all the others.
Mm.
And I explored it and realized that it was a big call center for the US for 1-900 numbers, which were popular at the time. You could pay 50 cents a minute and get your horoscope if you called a certain 1-900 number, or you could speak to a live person for $1 or $2 a minute. You could get pet advice or love advice, or, just all kinds of little things like that. And so when I resubmitted that press release, we got picked up by The Economist, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and three telecom trade publications. And
Wow.
so I was just like, wow, I think I may have figured this out. And I continued to do press releases focusing on the story and giving journalists the ingredients for them to craft a story arc approach to it, and continue to get picked up and continue to grow the business with new customers, new leads, but even more and more recognition within the industry every time we got earned media. And that's what it's called when you get, journalists writing about you. It's syndication when the press release is replicated on places, and that happens with even the news wires. But I always tell people that's a distraction. That's not the focus. You want the articles. You want a journalist crafting an article about you using the press release as the core information to get that.
Wow. And storytelling, I feel like it's starting to become even more of a key factor to success, not only to grow your business, but to also engage and get like your employees on board and candidates to want to join you in a way where you're not dealing with a lot of turnover, and the people are understanding where we're going and what you're marching towards. So storytelling is such a key to your success. And I know so many founders, especially on the tech front, that can be a little challenging. So by chance, as an expert, do you have any key steps that someone could take, or how they could think about maybe tackling their story writing of any kind of problem as being like the first time they're doing it? Like, what are some of the components of the story writing aspect that would make it successful?
It's really just getting an elevator pitch that incorporates, your, you know, what it was that, caused the business to be created, or what inspired a product or service. If you look at everybody who goes on Shark Tank, and I mention them because the producers of the show recommend us and tell them to do a press release before their episode airs. they all start with their story. What was it that landed them with this company or this product? And, often it is sharing a vulnerability, something that happened. They lost a job, they lost a loved one, they got a divorce. But anyhow, at the end of it, there was a need, a calling for them to create this business. Hey, I used to have this hobby that me and my dad did, and then he passed away, and I just got laid off, and I just said, I wonder if I could create a business around this hobby. And the reason that these stories exist, and they're short, they're elevator pitches. They're just a sentence or two or three at most. And the reason that they work so well is they cut through everything else, and they immediately give you this empathy, and it humanizes them. And all of a sudden it's no longer, I'm interested in this logo and corporation. I'm interested in these people behind it. And so, don't discount your story. As a founder, what was it that got you involved? And sometimes you're not even aware of it. I had a woman that I talked to, and we were going through one of these audit brainstorms, and she said, "I'm just coming up blank." And I was like, "Well, tell me about your family. What did your dad do, and what did your mom do?" And she goes, "Oh, my mom never worked. She always hated it because she always said that, she felt less than." And it
Mm.
was very important that I get educated and start a job. And she's like, she always cautioned me, be careful who you work under, and if you can, try to work for yourself. And I'm like, you don't think there's a story there, that and she's like, I never thought of it like that. And so sometimes you really need to do a deep dive and an audit and look at your business, and maybe there's something there. I first started doing podcasts, and I was just like, oh, I just created e-releases out of the thin air. And they're like, well, did you do PR before? And I was like, not really. I mean, I did press releases for this company. And it's like, but your business kind of focuses on press releases. So I had to spend a little time doing a deep dive and auditing myself. So I recommend that you do that as well. And, stuff can be encouraged a little bit. I would tell people, don't invent origin
Mm.
stories. eBay did that. In the early years, they shared the story about that the developer created it to help, I think, his girlfriend sell her Pez collection. And that was completely made up by a PR firm. And the reason they made it up is it worked really well. I mean, I can recall for 3 years straight, every article in Red Herring and all the big publications at the turn of the century, year 2000, all mentioned this story. And I think that they did that because it immediately humanized and made it feel like, oh, this geek just created something and then said, oh, I could start a business out of it. It's a beautiful thing. I know why the PR firm did it, but
Yeah.
do an audit, do a deep dive. Is there something there? And really work on that story. And if you can't focus your a press release specifically about that, incorporate it into the boilerplate. And that's a section of the press release that usually appears at the bottom, and it usually says about company, about
Mm.
Microsoft, and it's like a few sentences, like,
Yeah.
3 to 7 sentences. But maybe incorporate your story there, because a journalist reading through and gets that, they read that and they know, ooh, my audience are going to really feel for that,
Mhm.
that little bit of thing there. And like I said, it's the first thing that people on Shark Tank do, because it gets you to really care. And caring is so important, because people really like to do business with people. They don't like doing business with logos and brands and things like that. We have to, but it's so much easier to go and support someone you care about. I can't recall the number of times I've read a blog post or an article about a Kickstarter campaign, and I read about this person who's just, tilting against windmills, trying to get this one product that does this one thing. And he's got people who've almost got the product, and he's trying to get them to just make a change, and they won't. And he's like, am I going to have to do this myself? And the next thing you know, he's visiting factories or sending bids to different countries and stuff. And I support those left and right. And my thing is I click through, and if it's affordable backing, I'll just do it. I don't need that widget or whatever, but I bought into this person. I care a little bit about them, and that is really important. And one of the reasons that a lot of startups focus on PR as one of the first things they do. I've noticed that with the Shark Tank people that came through, Manscaped, Squatty Potty, they did many, many releases with us right out of the bat before they did paid advertising. And they said, we want to have on our website lots of real logos of real companies and links to real articles about us so that people have seen us in Shark Tank, but now they've read these other articles, and it just creates such a signal of trust. And so it's going to, when we cut on at paid advertising, the conversions are going to be much, much better. And we're going to have a smaller lead time. So if it normally takes a few weeks to turn someone into a customer, now it might take a few days. And so it really is one of the things that works so well, and why so many startups, really embrace PR and see it for the longer vision.
I love that. It's such a powerful story too. And so many times I talk about marketing, but never really about the PR side and how impactful, even just doing a little bit of that ahead of time, you might not need to do such a heavy marketing just yet. Let's get that PR side kicked off first. It's kind of like the baby step method, right?
Right.
And so you said it earlier, you're like, a lot of startups are starting to do this earlier on when our as our listeners are here listening and or watching and are thinking about whether they have it or not. If they don't have it, when is like a sweet spot that you have seen bringing it on? I mean, obviously, like, you and I could both say bring everything on at the beginning of like moment you decide a name, right? But the reality is that time and money are not our friends. And
Right.
so when is that kind of sweet spot that you've seen that's been very beneficial for businesses to start thinking about and implementing PR activities?
When you think about it, when you have someone in front of you saying now is the time for you to start, and you don't need to pay a PR firm. Some startups do, and they're able to afford it, and they go beyond a press release. They work personal relationships that they have. And I always tell people, if you are looking for a PR firm, make sure you pick one that's specific to an industry, because
Mhm.
it's hard to stay on top of personal connections, and I can't imagine someone who does that outside of more than one industry and does it well. And so if you're in the technology space, you only want to work with someone who is a PR firm for technology companies. If it's consumer electronics, someone who works with brands like that. Um, because the people I've had bad experiences with PR firms are the ones who are like, I will work with anybody as long as you pay me. And that's not a good recipe. That I
Yeah.
can tell it's not going to go well. And also another thing is, don't discount doing it yourself. eReleases is set up as a DIY sort of business, in that you can come in and order, one release at a time, or buy a package of releases, or you can have us write it. But I tell people we have a lot of samples and templates on our website. Really, consider writing it yourself. You can even lean on AI
I was
to
just
write
about to
it.
say
Uh,
that.
AI does a really good job of writing, but it does not do a good job of deciding what to write about. So never
Mhm.
come to AI and say, write a press release. Don't ever give it free rein like that. So the way I approach AI is I know what I'm going to write about. And so I'll tell AI. It's like, hey, I have this company. Here's a boilerplate about it. Here's our website, and I'm writing a press release about this subject. How would you structure say a 500 word press release on that? And it'll say, bloop, 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 and then say, okay, give me 10 headlines based off of that assumption, and pause between each headline and determine, is the next headline that you're giving me really distinct and unique? I find when you tell AI to stop and slow down and ponder, I get a much better result.
Wow. I'm gonna have to
Especially
try
when,
that next time.
yeah. And then I'm like, okay, now write the first paragraph. And I'm like, I read it and I'm like, is that a strong paragraph? And I'm like, I really want to incorporate this one aspect in that paragraph. Could you rewrite it with this? Then I get it what I want. If I'm still a little like, I'll say, give me three different versions of the opening paragraph. And again, pause between each and say, am I really giving you a unique and distinct paragraph between these? And again, boom, I get that. And then I approach it paragraph by paragraph. I also ask it to come up with an amazing quote, say something very concise, distinct and strong on this argument or position or thing that we're launching. And sometimes you have to go in there and just write that yourself.
Yeah.
Never go with a safe quote because the thing is, if a journalist is looking at two mid stories about the same level of newsworthiness and one has an amazing quote, they know they can write around that a really good article. But if they have a mid quote, like a so-so quote, any article they write is going to have that so-so quote in it. So they're going to gravitate to that press release with a better quote. So make sure you have a really strong quote. And journalists have managing editors and people they report to with a red pen, and they'll slash through a weak quote. So I've had clients inspire an article. The article gets published and they're not mentioned in it. And it was because that quote was so weak that the person just crossed through it
Oh,
and they didn't care that that person inspired it. It wasn't the journalist that did it, but the managing editor or someone else on staff. And so really you really want to spend some time. You're not expected to say a lot. Sometimes it could just a sentence, but say it in a concise and strong way that if a journalist was to paraphrase what you said, there'd be a loss or an ache for the original way that it was worded. And so, again, for most people who aren't wordsmiths or don't have a poetry
like
background like
me.
myself, uh, just making it condensed is strong is really the way to go. And also with AI, I said know what you want to write about, and I have a free masterclass where I teach people the types of press releases they should be doing. The truth
Wow.
is, a lot of people say press releases don't work. And I agree, 97% of people's press releases that are out there that actually go on a wire do not generate earned media. But that's not a reason not to do a press release. I focus on the 3% of press releases that do work. And there are models there and you can adapt them. So if you do a PR campaign, and a PR campaign is 6 to 8 releases, you don't have to do them all at once. You can do them 6 to 8 months. You can spread them out a year, even a year and a half if you're a small business and it just doesn't make sense to do that many all at one time. But you're going to do 6 to 8, and then you're going to gauge what worked and what didn't work. And it's just like I'm not going to judge one ad campaign that I've got running on Google, whether Google is good for advertising. I've got to set up different types of ads, different types of landing pages. I've got to play with it a while until I find something that works. And that free masterclass that I have for anyone who's interested is less than an hour long video and some additional materials that it comes with, can really allow you to do an audit of your business to see if there are several different of these 3% of press releases that do get picked up that could apply for you. And it's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN, and again, completely free. There's one press release that never fails, and that is to do a survey in your industry. And who are you to do a survey? You're the person who authored it. And it's as easy as that. It's credibility that's just waiting for you to claim it. And I've had it work for a local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania. I've had it
Ah,
work with all different types of businesses that are not newsworthy at all. And they felt such an imposter syndrome of who am I to author a survey? It's like anybody can do it. And
yeah.
so it's just a matter of asking some meaningful, timely questions right now. Looking at your industry, are there challenges? Coming out of the pandemic, it seems like work has changed for some people and work
Mhm.
culture. And are you struggling with that? There may be questions around that. Could be questions around AI. Do you feel like it's a threat to your business, or how that's working? But it can also be very specific to your actual industry. If there's something that you would ask, someone at a trade show or conference, like, hey, have you noticed lately that this is really going on and a lot of our customers are asking for X, Y, and Z? That could be a really great question to ask, especially if the reason you're asking is it's not being reported anywhere in your industry. It might be ripe for trade publications and people who cover your industry to write about it in an article. So ask those types of questions. I like SurveyMonkey. I like 4 questions per page, so you can do 8 questions, 12, 16. On the last page, you can put a crazy question sometimes, because sometimes those work really well for the local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania. That's what we ended up going with. We asked the question, "What's the strangest thing someone left in their car while being repaired?" And it was just an open field, so statistically, it had no relevance, but it really went viral.
Oh my gosh, those must have
Uh,
been some fun quotes in that.
Yes, there were. It was like a boa constrictor. There was
Oh,
uh there was somebody in an urn that had to be recovered from a memorial after hours.
oh
There
my
was just all
goodness.
kinds of little
Oh
fun
man.
anecdotes is what they turned out to be. But they
Yeah.
they were they were very viral and did very well in automotive trade publications, their local newspaper, and a lot of other places. And they were looking for links. And so we built out the survey page with all the questions and responses. And we only put the top, I think it was 20 of the anecdotes of what was the strangest thing left in a car, but we linked to all the other ones on the website. So a lot of these trade publications and places that don't normally linked to it because it was a resource page for the survey. It had more information. They knew their people would want to see it. And those links were critical for them because they had lost their domain name, which was
Mm.
somehow tied to the yellow pages. And I don't know what happened there, but they had a new domain and they weren't ranking. And an SEO person had recommended me to have a discussion. And I just told him, I said, the only way you, as a local auto repair shop, is going to stand out is to do a survey in your industry. So we did that. And the next big thing people say is, I don't know enough people to send a survey to. Great thing is, we do just like we did here. You just partner with an independent or small trade association. We went to Independent Auto Repair Shops of America, something like that. They had over 1,500 members, and we asked if they would take that link and send it to their members. And we told them we're looking for at least 100 responses for it to be statistically relevant. And in exchange for this, we will mention you in the press release we'll be issuing over PR Newswire in the coming weeks. And they immediately said yes. And why? Because the small and independent trade associations get no media attention. As a matter of
Mm.
fact, you probably don't know of any in your industry, and they're out there because they don't get a lot of attention. The big one does. And so avoid the big ones. They've got
Yeah.
their own PR, they got their own team. They don't need you. But these smaller and independent ones, find one that represents you, like what you would fit, and go from there. I actually had someone on one of these podcasts tell me, well, Mickie, in our industry, the Public Relations Society of America, that is the one big exception because there aren't any others. And I had to break it to her. There's over 470
Ooh.
other trade associations for PR and marketing that was related to publicity in the US alone. And some of them
Wow.
don't make sense because it's like Florida or the Mid Atlantic, but some of them were like, independent shops of 50 employees or less. That's a really great group of people and really represents, who I am. And so that would be really good for someone who's looking to send this out. Uh, about 2/3 of the time, the first trade association that we approach will say yes. And so sometimes you have to go to the second one. And then, you get the responses, you analyze them, and you look at it and say, what's the biggest surprise here? Print it out, share it with your colleagues, share it with other people, say, what would be the biggest shocker of this survey? And once you've sort of come up with one or two, write a press release for that one or both of them, and then have someone read that and see what they think. So, again, you can use AI once you have the results and everything like that. The quote is generally going to either provide some analysis of why you felt the numbers skewed a particular way. And sometimes they can make you sound really grounded, like, hey, in this survey of graphic designers, 82% feel that Adobe is evil and AI is going to take our jobs. And you could say, hey, while I don't think that that's true, I do believe that, the overwhelming majority of people in graphic design who do not know how to utilize AI in the next 5 years will probably be at a very serious disadvantage from anyone else. And so
Yeah.
it makes you seem logical and grounded. And the great thing is that quote will be in there. You are the author of the survey. You will get earned media. On average, we get 8 to 14 articles from just doing that one type of press release. And the least we've ever had is 4 for someone that I've
Wow.
coached through the process. So,
Yeah.
and yet I've seen people spend $20,000 to $40,000 with a PR firm and come to me saying, "Hey, we have an announcement we want to do, but I don't want to go through the PR firm anymore because they got us nothing." And I'm like, "Nothing?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, is it because I'm a poet? But I have this one press release that just works, and I've been able to replicate it every time. I would like to take credit for inventing that, but I didn't. It was actually one of my customers basically had a link farm, and they represented like 30 verticals. So if you were looking for top accounting software, they would have the top 10 or top 5 for that. And if you were looking for, top CRM for auto sales people, they would have that. And it was just a link farm, and they didn't have a big reputation, but like over 7, 8 years ago, they started doing a survey or two, and they saw that they got picked up and all these links going back to that one section, that one vertical. And so they started doing these surveys for all of these verticals, and they were doing 30 plus press releases a year, each one on
Wow.
a different vertical. Every one of them got 8 to 20 articles, and they've sort of cooled down on that, but now they get called every time there's breaking news, like, hey, we've heard talks about these two software giants maybe merging, or one of them's targeting this third company for an acquisition. Do you have a comment on it? And it's because they've been elevated as experts, because of
Yeah.
the credibility that comes from being there. So from link farm to legitimate business, just using earned media, and that's one of the great things about PR, and really making it work for you. And not everybody has to do a survey or study, but that's one of the ones that's in my master class that is just never fails, and anybody can utilize that.
That's great, Mickie. I really appreciate that. Some great stories and some really great tips to be thinking about and how you can start exploring your PR if you're not doing it already. And so I really appreciate your time. I can't believe it. It's already time for us to say goodbye to our audience here today. But thank you so much for joining us, Mickie. And for the audience, look forward to you joining us next time. Thanks, everyone.